Oversight and Investigations is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm especially grateful that you've called this hearing. Just a brief comment about evictions. I was once the judge of a court that dealt with forcible entry and detainers, which is another way of saying evictions. And literally, the law in Texas is that a person who is being evicted will have 5 days to move, 5 days. My fear is that in Texas, the law, if applied as written, will create a circumstance of homelessness unlike we have seen in the state in my lifetime. Let me move now to the public sector employees. I have an indication that as of July 20th, 2020, 1.5 million public sector employees have been laid off. And this is since March. And state governments are projected to face budget shortfalls of approximately $615 billion over the next year. I know for a fact that tax collections in Houston are down. I know that tourism is down. I have spoken to the mayor and I've spoken to persons associated with these industries. With this being the circumstance, Professor Rice, former Secretary of Labor, I believe you are in a great position to comment on the people who are being impacted. It's one thing for me to say 1.5 million public sector employees, but can you give us some sense of who these employees are and how their loss of jobs will impact the lives of the people that they serve? Professor Reich.
Congressman Green, we know something about these people. About half of the 1.5 million people who have been laid off by the states were school employees. We also know that about 20% of them were essential healthcare workers. We also know that about twice as many people from state and local governments were laid off between April and May as were furloughed or laid off in the entire Great Recession from state and local governments. So we're talking about very, very large numbers of people who are, many of them, we might call frontline workers in terms of this pandemic. They are critical to many services that our citizens rely on.
And Dr. Reich, if I may continue, maybe I've promoted you, but if I have, I think it's earned. Former Secretary and Professor Reich, these critical services that you've mentioned, many of these persons have families and they work notwithstanding the conditions that they have to tolerate. I'm concerned about their health also. And I'm concerned that they work and they don't get this hazard pay. We proposed hazard pay for persons who are working in these critical areas, essential workers. Your thoughts about their lives and how their lives can be impacted and how this can impact citizens around them with reference to the coronavirus.
Congressman, here's what we know about essential workers so far. We know that they have been exposed to a far greater degree to the virus and have succumbed to infection to a greater degree than people who are working remotely. We also know that they are by and large lower wage workers. We know that they are disproportionately people of color. We also know about these essential workers that when they do become infected, they do transmit to other people. They are very often centers of hotspots around the country. And finally, we know that we're not doing enough as a country to protect essential workers in terms of personal protective equipment, or even in terms of regulations, federal regulations. And I'm talking now primarily about the agency that I used to supervise, and that is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. OSHA has not provided, either for essential workers in the private sector or the public sector, standardized, necessary, across the board, minimal safety and health requirements with regard to their employers. That is an absolute necessity.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.